What's up guys? So today's video originally was supposed to be just a standalone regular review of the new Justifier set. And just about 20 minutes ago I was trying to shoot that video, but I wasn't quite nailing it. I just wasn't saying what I wanted to say and I wasn't really happy with what I was doing. So I decided to move away from it. I was going to go mess with the Justifier and play around with it a little bit more to get a better feel for it so I could describe it better for you guys. But as I was sitting over there playing with it, just trying to gather some ideas, I started thinking of mod ideas, and then I started gathering new and different pieces to add on to the set. And very quickly it became dangerous because I was going to enter a point of no return after doing so many modifications that a review video wouldn't have made sense because it wouldn't have been the original vehicle. So really quickly, we're going to pull the Justifier in here and we're going to take a look at it before I do any modifications to it, and then we're going to take a look at the preliminary modifications I do after. So here is the Justifier right out of the box, and nothing's changed on the exterior. I have moved around just a few pieces on the inside. So standard right out of the box, LEGO has already done a pretty amazing job at the extra little tidbits and little bits of greebling detail that they have scattered all over the ship. The largest sections of greebling are actually on the rear wings of the ship near the main engine. It is symmetrical on both sides, but they use a bunch of miscellaneous pieces, bars, and some different kind of stud bits to really fill up this area and make it look really mechanical, like it's the interior portions of the ship that shouldn't really be shown on the outside. And then as we get back up towards the front of the set, you see a whole bunch of stickers that help provide a lot of detail. And I know stickers are a con for some, and some people really don't like applying those, but it was actually surprisingly easy on this set. Even some of these larger ones, like on these large slope bricks on either side of the cockpit here, it was rather easy to apply. We're getting into specifics a little too much though. I wanted this to be a quick little look at the interior and exterior before I slapped on these mods. So as many of us know, the Justifier does come in two configurations. Here we have our landed configuration with the rear engine facing the floor, and then two landing skids have come out underneath either wing here. So to go from the landed configuration to the flying form, you just grab by the rear engine and fold up. And now you have these engines facing the rear so it can propel the craft forward. And then as well, the landing skids on either side of the cockpit have been folded up into the ship so they're flush with the rest of the craft. And then when you're ready to go back into a landed configuration, just grab by that rear engine once more and fold down. So that really covers a rough quick look at the exterior of the Justifier. Other than the landing and flight configurations, the only other play features that we have on the outside are actually on the end of either wings, and we do have one spring-loaded shooter on each side. And if you don't like keeping your missiles in the spring-loaded shooters because you can set them off really easily, you can go ahead and fold up each wing and store one on the underside. But we've covered the exterior, let's go ahead and take a quick look inside. So inside, as you can see, I have actually crammed all 5 minifigures on this interior space. Up front, of course, in the pilot seat, we have Cad Bane piloting the craft. And then just behind him, we have Fennec Shan and Toto 360 looking at Hunter and Omega in their prison cell. The majority of detail in this interior section is up towards the pilot seat. You can see Cad Bane has some control panels just in front of him to help pilot the craft, and then as well a weapon clip on either side so he always has his weapons close by and ready. And the pilot seat on this set is actually really good already. The figure isn't studded in so their legs or the whole figure won't get stuck. They're just slotted in, and as well Cad Bane has a nice enough backrest, though this does conflict with the large hat he wears. When you slot Cad Bane into the pilot seat, you can see that the brim of his hat is actually leaning against the chair rather than the back of his head. So I might make a small modification to remedy that, but it really isn't a problem, it's just a personal preference kind of thing. Now the last section to go over is actually on the underside rear portion of the craft. If we pull open this rear hatch and bring out this small little plate, you can see we have a whole bunch of treasure on this small little cart. And this is the only portion of the set that I've actually already modified. These two empty storage containers, according to the instructions, should be on the inside of your craft right here. But that took up a lot of minifigure space for where figures could be standing and hanging around, so I went ahead and tossed them on this little cart in the rear here. Everything else on this plate was already here on the set by default. I've just added on these 2 extra pieces that I had from the set. So that was a quick look at the Justifier. I'm going to hop back to my desk and start applying some preliminary mods. And I say preliminary mods because I only want to do a few mods in this video. I don't want to go all out on modifying this set just yet. And that's because I want to use your guys' suggestions, so if you guys have any mod ideas or suggestions that you want me to do the Justifier, please drop them in the comments below so they can make it into the main Justifier mod video. I'm excited to put a few small mods on the set right now, but I do want to make a larger video in the future using some of your guys' community suggestions. So I'm going to hop back to the desk and we're going to start throwing some pieces at this set and see what we come up with. So I threw a few pieces at it, and this is our final product. So as far as the exterior of the Justifier goes, there's not too many large changes, if any large changes. But the few that I've done to the outside we'll go over real quick. So like we mentioned in the before portion of this video, we did say that the main portion of greebling on this set was at the rear of the 2 wings here. And that still remains true, and I did change it up just a tidbit. You can't quite tell unless you've built the set and you're familiar with the pieces. But on this side here, I've added this small antenna, another clip on this bar piece that leads into this piping detail that goes down into the center of the ship. And on the right side here, we've just added one T-bar piece here that's leading into this main bar that was already on the ship. And then we went ahead and tossed one stud underneath this little bar piece. I'm not too sure what this piece is called, but I'm a huge fan of it. I just did these small minute changes to the greebling here because I wanted it to be a tiny bit asymmetrical, as many ships in Star Wars are, especially with their greebling. And while I do love the look of the symmetrical Justifier, I did want to add a little bit of variety just in the little bits of greebling back here. And while we're on the rear here, those of you that are already familiar with the Justifier set, you'll notice I changed up the way that this shield piece is built up to lead into this large slope here. I just added a few different pieces on the shield piece here, and now I think it more smoothly goes up into that large slope to the point in the middle there. Moving on from this small structure change in the rear engine, we can go ahead and go down the center fuselage of the ship, and you can see we've added some minute little details around these sloping bits here. These large 1x4 slope pieces were already on the original set, and while I did already like the look of this, there was nothing wrong with the look of this section. I just wanted a little bit of variety in the smooth studded look we had going over the entire craft. So we added a tiny bit of bar/piping detail as well as some smooth tiles around it that match the color scheme of the Justifier. And the circular tile you see here with the plate on top is the beginning of a large modification to try and cover up this large gap in between the two plates. I've already covered up a little bit of the gap towards the engines here on either side with this 1x2 sloped grilled piece and then this small plate on the inside there. It really isn't that much. On either side, I just added a little bit of extra pieces on the top and bottom here, one cheese slope down here, and then this wedge tile with some extra smooth pieces on top. So from the side cannons, we're going to follow the wings up to the main fuselage of the ship here. And besides the detailing we already covered in the back, the only other things we added are these two pieces on either side here. The last exterior modifications we have are actually on the bottom side of the wing, so we're going to go ahead and flip it over here and we can take a look. On the right side of the ship here, I went ahead and added one large bomb canister. I don't know about you guys, but when I built the Justifier and started playing with it, for some reason it really looked like a bomber to me, and it looks like it could just drop endless bombs out of these large wings here. So I went ahead and added one large one on this side here. And then on this other side, we have a little bit more of an experimental bomb. This is actually a small droid that flies itself towards its target and then blows up. But other than that, that completely covers all the exterior modifications that we've done to the Justifier. Now we can go ahead and head inside. So up towards the front, I've actually modified Cad Bane's cockpit area quite a bit. I'm going to go ahead and remove him so you guys can actually see the changes that we've made. Most of it involved adding more control panels and different controls around him, so his cockpit really looked like a Star Wars cockpit. Tons of screens and buttons and lights everywhere, and that's really what I wanted to go for. So in front of him, rather than the control panel going across that front window, it's just on either sides of the two structural struts, so it's not blocking any portion of his view down the center anymore. On the left side here, we have another control panel with one of his bounty targets, which appears to be a Mandalorian this time around. And we also removed the weapon clip on this side. Unlike the previous side though, I did keep the weapon clip on this side, but you can very obviously see it no longer stores weapons because I've added my own weapon stand here. And we'll go over the weapon stand in just 1 second. We're not quite done up front. I'm going to peel off some of the front cockpit here, and that's because I've actually modified Cad Bane's command chair, and there's no real good way to look at it from up top, so I'm going to remove a few pieces so you guys can get a better look at it. The way I peeled the cockpit off was actually standard from the original set, though it's not advertised as a play feature, I don't believe. If you're having trouble getting your fingers in here when you're playing with it, you can go ahead and peel off those smooth tiles on either side, and it'll allow you to tear off that front cockpit piece. But back onto the modifications we did, I did actually modify Cad Bane's command chair here. A small complaint I had with the original set was the fact that his command chair was always running into the hat he was wearing, rather than the back of his head. When you slot Cad Bane into the pilot seat, you can see that the brim of his hat is actually leaning against the chair rather than the back of his head. So now the original 1x2 backrest going vertical has now been changed out for a 1x2 backrest going horizontal. And when you put your Cad Bane figure in the cockpit, you can see his hat ever so slightly clears the top of the chair, but the chair is still tall enough to keep him supported when he's flying the craft. Moving on from the command chair up front, we can go ahead and move over to that weapon stand we saw earlier. And luckily, Past Me was thinking ahead, and I made it super easy to take out, so reviewing it won't be a problem. Here's a better look at this weapon stand that we went ahead and created. Down the spine of the weapon stand, we have his two signature blaster pistols on either side. Cad Bane is notorious for dual wielding, so I wanted to make sure I retain that feature on his weapon case. And then up top, if he ever feels like changing up his style, he has a bigger, heavier blaster. Before we toss the weapon stand back inside though, there is a little bit more interior detail that I'd like to go over, and having this out would just make it a little bit easier. So behind Cad Bane's main chair, you can see I've made Fennec Shand her own little bench. This is a really optional / placeholder mod. Cad Bane typically does his bounties alone, and he typically doesn't have passengers unless they're prisoners. So I definitely think this space could be used a little bit differently in the future, so if you guys have a suggestion, let me know. But then back on over to the side with the weapon stand, you can see I've added some small controls for the jail cell. So you can see on that 1x2 slope brick on the bottom, we just have some buttons to open up and close the jail cell. And then just above, we have a small monitor displaying some vitals and some information about your prisoners. Moving on to the prison cell though, we'll go ahead and open it up. It still opens up standard from the original set. So on this left side here, we have Omega just sitting around in the jail cell. And on the right side, we have Hunter elevated up a little bit, and that's because I added a small chair on the inside here. It's a relatively simple build, and I tucked it all the way in the corner so it doesn't take up the main portion of minifigure space. That pretty much covers the front interior space, but there's a small tiny tidbit of interior space left that we haven't gone over yet. If we go ahead and head towards the rear of the craft, on the underside, if you guys remember, we had a small hatch back here. And originally, the set came with a small little treasure cart. But if we fold this hatch open, you guys can see I've actually changed it out for something completely different. I decided to repurpose that interior space. I liked that small treasure cart, but there was so many minifigures, and cramming them all up front makes it a little, well, crammed. So I decided to make a small little bed with some personal storage on the backside here. You can go ahead and slot whatever minifigure you want. For now, we have Hunter leaning all the way back. But apart from the bed, I did mention we have some small personal storage on the front end here. And for now, it appears Cad Bane storing an extra blaster, a melee weapon, and some thermal detonators. And for those of you that don't really want a bed space or personal storage area, you can still use your treasure cart, and I've actually kept mine together, but I modified it quite a bit. You can see we have all the standard cargo from the original set, but I have added one extra Imperial cargo container on the rear side here. And on the center of the cart, we have a container locked with a keypad. So that covers the changes that we made to the treasure on the cart, but you can see on either side, we just added some small gates/walls to keep it from falling off when you're moving it. And on the underside, you can see we have some small 1x2 trans blue pieces meant to emulate some repulsors, so it's floating ever so slightly off the ground, because we know most things in Star Wars don't actually have wheels. Despite the changes, the treasure cart still does fit in the craft, but you do have to have it in the flying configuration, so the rear engine is vertical upwards. But here, we can slide it in just fine, close up the rear hatch, and it still uses its landing and flying functions just fine, without knocking the door open or modifying the treasure at all. The bed, however, can fit inside in the landed or flying configuration. And after all this time, we've completely covered every modification I've done so far to the new Justifier set. And my apologies guys, I didn't expect this video to end up so long. I'll try and shave it down in editing, but it seems I might have gotten a little carried away here or there. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I've mentioned already, please leave your comments below for any other mod suggestions you want me to do to this craft in the main video that we do later on. Even if your suggestion replaces or changes something that I've already done, I would still love to hear it and love to give it a go if I can. Other than that, make sure you guys like the video down below and subscribe so you can stay up to date on all the alternate builds and mods I post in the future, especially with the new Summer Wave coming out on August 1st. Other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace, fellas.